Alright, guys, let's talk about Chapter 21, which is the right to privacy. So, a couple of key words to hit before we go into it. Privacy is the state of not being seen, used, or shared. So, anything you want to keep to yourself would be private. Surveillance is to closely watch something. Evidence is facts or information used to prove something. Then we'll talk about warrants a little bit more specifically in a minute. So suppose you come home one day and you find your front door standing wide open. First thing you're going to wonder is, were you robbed or someone in your house right now? You ask yourself, what's going on? Inside, you find the police officer searching through all of your stuff. So if the police are going through all of your stuff, what are you going to want to know right away? You're going to want to know why they're in your house. What are they looking for? The police officer says, you look like a troublemaker, so we're checking to make sure you're not causing any problems. They tell you to just sit down and wait quietly. So are they allowed to do that? Well, in this case, no, because they're missing one crucial thing they need. In America, for them to come in and search your property, they need a warrant or they need a probable cause. So this type of thing should not happen in the United States. In the United States, the Constitution protects against searches. The 4th and the 14th Amendment both are set up to protect a person's privacy and their private property. So in most cases, even if the police think you broke a law, they cannot search your home without your permission or without a warrant. Now, if the police come and they knock on the door and say, hey, can we come take a look around, then you let them in. That's legal. That's your decision to make. But for the police to get a warrant, for them to be able to search your house without your permission, they need to get it approved by a judge. So why would the right to privacy be important to us? There's lots of different reasons, but if you think back to when America was first starting, when we had a king, the King of England was controlling the United States. So under the king's rule, soldiers could search anybody's home they wanted, and they could confiscate people's property. So without a warrant, the king could send soldiers to your house, and he could just take your stuff. No warrant, no arrest, no accusation of a crime. So the king used this to find out what kind of people were plotting things against him. When they wrote the Constitution after we separated from Great Britain, they said, you know what, we don't ever want that kind of thing to happen again. They knew that freedom was important. They thought that searching people's houses like this and confiscating their property was stealing, and it basically is. So today, the guarantee of privacy is more important than it has ever been. If you think about it, you got a phone on you all the time. You might have an Amazon Alexa in your house. You have, your history gets tracked anytime you go on Google, if you go on Facebook. If you post a photo, it's got a GPS location tag to it. So there's all kinds of different ways that our privacy is being taken away little by little. So today, there's tape recorders. Everyone's got a phone. And a phone, you can switch to camera and start recording right away. So all these things make it much easier to spy on somebody than it's ever been in the past. People need to feel like their private lives are protected, and they need to feel comfortable in their homes. So there are some limits to the right to privacy. The government needs to be able to gather information to catch people who break the law. So if you're suspected of a crime, you can lose some of your right to privacy. But there's very strict rules as to what is supposed to happen before the government is allowed to invade your privacy. The police, the FBI, and other government officials are allowed to enter your home, but they can only do so if you give them your permission or if they come with a warrant. And they are not allowed to search your house if you don't understand what the warrant is about, what they're looking for. So like if you have a grandparent who doesn't speak English and the police show up and she's the only one home and they show grandma the warrant and she doesn't understand it, they're not supposed to go in until someone can explain what the warrant actually says. No one can force you to agree to a search without a warrant. So if the police show up and they say, hey, you need to let us search your house or else we're going to take you to jail, and they don't have a warrant, they're not allowed to do that. They're not allowed to threaten you to get you to comply with a search. Now, once they have a warrant, there's not much you can do to stop the search. So second, the police can sometimes take evidence and go into a home without a warrant. But usually when they do that, there's going to be some kind of exigent circumstances. There's going to be some kind of reason they need to go in quickly. But let's go back a second. For them to come in with a warrant, they need to go to a judge and prove to a judge that they have a good reason to suspect you may have broken the law. So they can't just say you look like a troublemaker. They need to have something connecting you to the crime. So they have to show that to the judge, and the judge has to decide, is that enough for them to come in and search your house? And the warrant is supposed to say exactly where they will search and what they are searching for. So it's supposed to say where, when, and what they're looking for. If the police do not follow the guidelines of the search warrant, the things they find can be thrown out and not used as evidence. So back to when the police can come in without a warrant. So they can come in without a warrant, but usually it has to be some kind of extreme circumstance. So like if they see that you are destroying evidence, or if they see that a crime is committed, or if they can hear screams coming from inside of a house, they're not going to call the judge and get a warrant. They're going to come in right away. So the police can also act without a warrant if something is in plain view. So what that means is like if they can see through the window of your house that you have a whole bunch of illegal weapons. You have a bazooka and a grenade launcher, and you're making pipe bombs in the living room, and you got the windows open. They don't need a search warrant then if it's in plain view. So what happens if the police conduct an illegal search? The evidence they find cannot be used in court. The courts have decided the Fourth Amendment protects more than just your homes. It also protects anywhere where you would expect privacy. So what that means is like offices, hotel rooms, public phones, cars. No one's allowed to invade your privacy in those places. The Fourth Amendment protects people in any place where they would normally expect privacy. So there was actually a story recently, it's a Netflix documentary, about this guy who owned a motel with a whole bunch of different rooms in it, and he had put cameras hidden in all of the rooms and was spying on the guests. Well, he owns the motel, so he could say, he's allowed to do that, but that's not really the case because you go into those rooms expecting privacy, and your privacy is being invaded because you're being recorded without knowing, without your consent. The Fourth Amendment covers telephone wiretaps, hidden tape recorders, and cameras. Most of those things are illegal. So in most cases, it's illegal to record somebody without them knowing. So in 1962, some government officials in California thought people were cheating on their welfare. They thought that families were lying about how many people actually lived there so they could get bigger welfare checks. So they came up with a plan to catch these people who they were saying were cheaters. So what they did is they started going door to door at 6:30 a.m. on a Sunday morning. The two welfare workers would go to each home. When somebody came to the door, they would say, "Hey, you need to let us in. We're with the welfare department." So the people complained. They took their case to court, and they said they came into our house without a search warrant. That's illegal. And the people of the county, the welfare workers said, "Yeah, we came in, but we didn't need a warrant because no one forced you to let us in." So here's where it gets tricky. They didn't force the people to let them in, but if the welfare workers show up at your house and say, "We need to come in and search," and welfare is the only income you are getting at that time, you're going to be afraid of losing the welfare. So they basically intimidated these people into letting them search without a warrant. So the California court agrees with the citizens and their complaints. They say that the county had no reason to suspect most of the people, and the people needed the welfare and they were afraid they would lose it. So while they didn't come out and threaten them, their actions were still threatening. In addition, they never told the people they had the right to refuse the search. They said, "We need to come in and search." They didn't tell them they could say no. So the court decided that they needed a legal warrant to do those kind of searches in the future, and the county had to stop. Okay guys, so what I need you to do now, it's a shorter lesson. Go into Google Classroom, Chapter 21, and knock out the worksheet on Chapter 21, Right to Privacy.